This is a Rough Tiger production.
And you, and you, and you, and you were there. Some of it wasn't very nice, but most of it was beautiful. You really did it.
Hello.
You write it all. You destroyed it. Are we recording?
Yes, huh?
Oh.
We are now.
Welcome to Dream Idiots.
Hello.
Welcome to the final episode before Thanksgiving, or is it? Because we have some surprise drops coming. I'm Morris. That's Bryan. Each
Greetings.
week we bring you stories. Sometimes we bring you quizzes. Sometimes we bring you our favorite lists of stuff. Sometimes we bring you just utter nonsense.
We try anyway.
We do try.
Yeah. Thanks for tagging along with us and listening to our stuff. Had another surprise drop recently. Have some other things kind of coming up in the pipeline here soon. And thanks for hanging in there and liking and sharing and subscribing if you can, whichever platform you're on. Give us 5 stars, shoot us a review. That helps us a whole bunch in terms of the algorithms, etc. You can drop us a line at dreamidiotspodcast@gmail.com. Check us out at dreamidiots.com or check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Dream Idiots as well there. So check us out, please.
Bryan, you asked me earlier if we had any updates. I do have one.
Okay.
We did lose former First Lady Rosalind Carter, and I am very sad about that. That was she and her husband Jimmy Carter she was in hospice, and he is still in hospice. As I recall, I was the only person in my second grade class to actually vote for Jimmy Carter in our mock election in second grade. Sympathies go out to the Carter family as they're dealing with their loss this week, Thanksgiving week.
Yeah, absolutely. The last president we had who probably wasn't a complete narcissist.
Yeah. Good man.
Yeah,
good
absolutely.
Man.
Yep.
Good family.
Totally agree.
All right. Bryan, this is an odd numbered episode, and you get to go first. What you got for us this week?
Well, this is a story I came across a long time ago and have been trying to figure out when exactly to use it. So we're dropping it in for Thanksgiving week for no particular reason, but because it's just because I had it written and ready to go. We're going to talk about a man named Sir Mansfield Smith-Cumming. Sir Mansfield Smith-Cumming was born simply as Mansfield George Smith on 1st of April, 1859. Not a whole lot is known about this guy's childhood because his childhood was crazy short. He managed somehow to enlist in the British Royal Navy at the ripe age of 12. In the Navy, he definitely had a chance to see the world. He patrolled the East Indies. He was decorated for his actions in Egypt, fought Malay pirates, and he climbed the ranks of the Navy, became a flag lieutenant by the time he was 25, 26, in 1885. He was known as being a clever officer with a knowledge of electricity and photography. He was also bilingual, spoke French quite well, and was also a gifted artist, apparently. He could draw quite well. But one thing that Smith-Cumming did not have as a vital attribute to be an effective sailor, he didn't have sea legs. He had just incredibly bad seasickness, which just made serving rather difficult. And he was forced to retire.
En français.
I don't know what it is in French.
Mal de mer. Mal de mer.
Hey, you're right. Yeah, mal de mer. You're right. Yeah. How the hell do you know that?
I don't know. How do I know half the shit I know?
So anyway, Smith-Cumming's forced to retire from the Royal Navy in 1885 because he's deemed unfit for duty. So he goes back to solid land. He meets a lady. Smith-Cumming marries Leslie Marion Valiant Cumming in 1889. He actually stuck her name to the end of his own, thus becoming, thus acquiring the Cumming name, so to speak. The facts around his Smith-Cumming's entry into the world of spycraft, which we'll talk about here in a moment, are a little bit opaque because most of those details were kept secret, but a few things are definitely known. In 1909, he receives a mysterious letter inviting him to come to London. The letter, which probably came from a man named Arthur Wilson, who had been one of his naval commanders, promised him, quote, something good, unquote. Well, that something good was a job with the Secret Service Bureau. So the SSB was established in 1909, and Smith-Cumming is tasked with the job of expanding the foreign aspect of it. And so he starts working for what was then termed the Foreign Intelligence Service. So why would you set up a spy service, spy agency? Well, the British were getting increasingly paranoid about German spies on British land. The Daily Mail actually wrote at the time, quote, refuse to be served by a German waiter. If your waiter says he is Swiss, ask to see his passport. They were that paranoid. So they're definitely concerned about German spies having an extensive system of a network that was plotting espionage against British citizens on British soil. So they decided to fight fire with fire and set up an agency of their own. At first, Smith-Cumming didn't really have a whole lot to do. His first day of work in October 1909, he wrote in his diary, went to the office and remained all day, but saw no one, nor was there anything much to do there, unquote. Smith-Cumming found himself working from the ground up in this field in a country that didn't really feel like it hadn't really needed spies since Napoleon, basically. The Foreign Office had always maintained a fund for espionage, had maintained money for it for decades, and spies had been informally engaged as early as the reign of Elizabeth I. So going back to the time of Shakespeare, basically. But it wasn't really under any sort of umbrella. There was no formal agency until now. And so there is this vague, nebulous, hard to define threat, but nevertheless, there's the sense that there is a German threat. The Secret Service Bureau initially is under the command of a guy named Major William, making names up now, Major Vernon Kell. So Kell is Smith-Cumming's superior, but the agency has no real budget, has no real guidelines, doesn't yet have any agents, and no real clear directive. So great, right? Who do we spy on? Go. So he's kind of treading water a little bit, at least initially. And what's more, the Army is considered the SSB to be under its umbrella, under its authority. And Smith-Cumming then has to spend weeks trying to convince higher up that his agency should be allowed to be completely independent, governing foreign affairs, and then Kell should handle all domestic matters. So finally, that all gets worked out. Smith-Cumming is granted basically independence. He sets up new operations for this early agency at Ashley Mansions on Vauxhall Bridge Road in London. And they're basically hiding in plain sight. He sets up a bogus address so he can receive mail, but still there's not a lot going on. But the agency quickly grows. By 1915, so a year, 18 months into World War I, Smith-Cumming has gathered about 1,000 people working for him as agents, each referred to by just one letter to preserve secrecy. So he had agents B, D, L, and K, among many others, who are scurrying around in Germany, in Western Europe, and they're mostly gathering info or trying to gather info on German naval operations. Smith-Cumming himself was known simply as C, which he famously used to write his official reports. So his signature on the front of reports in green ink. He just put just the letter C. So early days of the FIS, which will later become MI6, are kind of filled with some moments of genuine brilliance and success and some victories, but also some moments of amateurish and amateur behavior and stupidity and just kind of rampant silliness. The agents that report to Mansfield Smith-Cumming were an odd mix. The spy agency didn't officially exist, so that made it really hard to get top-notch recruits. Instead, he winds up overseeing the work of guys who are, let's just call them slippery. This would include Sidney Riley, who I believe I've mentioned at least once before. So Sidney Riley was a spy. He's thought to be the model or one of the models for James Bond that Ian Fleming used. Riley was mostly in Russia, in St. Petersburg. Riley was a known criminal. He happily killed lots of people. He's played by Sam Neill in Ace of Spies, a series that was produced for PBS in the early 80s.
Oh, right.
But in spite of his ill repute, he was extremely effective, and Smith-Cumming loved him, relied on his work in St. Petersburg and elsewhere. There's another recruit that was just known as Major HLB. The major claimed to have a ring filled with Peruvian poison that could kill in 3 seconds. I couldn't quite figure out how you administer the poison, whether you jam your fingers in his mouth, make him swallow the whole, I don't know. But
and what does he have against Peruvians? Right. Is it just for Peruvians?
Yeah, racist. He allegedly had a tie pin that was actually a camera, and he had extensive knowledge of German spies in London. Smith-Cumming noted that Major was no doubt a blackguard, but probably is a clever one, and I should like to get something out of him. But he went on saying, well, frankly, all of my staff are blackguards, just being, rascals, ruffians, criminals, whatever. So the agents working under Smith-Cumming also were known to make requests that were somewhat out of bounds. They wanted allowances, pay my expenses to cover my appetite for booze and prostitutes. Other sources demanded fees for their services. There was a pair of informers who asked for £5,000, which is $350K in today's money, in exchange for information on German naval bases. Smith-Cumming managed to get away with just giving them £10, but got the intel he wanted out of them. In its early years, the FIS kind of stumbled along. One weapons expert got out of the wrong elevator in a French hotel and became completely lost. A researcher working for Smith-Cumming discovered somehow, I don't know how they discovered this or whose brainstorm this really was, but a researcher discovered that semen could be used as an invisible ink, which led to the popular interagency joke that, quote, every man has his own stylo, unquote. Men are pigs.
Yes.
This idea is later dismissed because of the smell. Reportedly, there was one agent for which this was a particular problem, and it was later discovered that he was perhaps a little over enthusiastic about filling his ink well. Apparently, when using it as an ink, fresh semen is best. Waiting for that to be in a movie.
I say, oh man, I can't carry around this old gray gym sock with me forever. Gross.
Nasty. So as the agency grows and develops, Smith-Cumming also has a kind of a growing reputation of his own. He was a big fan of driving cars at high rates of speed around the city of London. And that apparently was the cause of an accident he had. He was driving in France, had a pretty severe car accident in 1914. The accident actually killed his only son, Alistair, and left Cumming pretty badly injured. He lost part of a leg, and it was rumored that he'd cut off his own limb with a penknife. He goes back to London, and reportedly, Smith-Cumming, now many months later after his recovery, he would stab his wooden leg with a letter opener or a fountain pen in front of potential new recruits, and if they flinched, he'd remark, "Well, I'm afraid you just won't do," and dismiss them. The fable story about how he lost his leg kind of grew and changed, evolved over time, was kind of blown out of proportion, became increasingly fantastic, and Smith-Cumming, told the story repeatedly, loved telling it. He often wore a golden monocle. He carried a sword hidden in a cane, and Of course he did, right? Because
Yeah.
that's just handy. Letter opener. And zipped around the agency's brand new headquarters at 2 Whitehall Court, zipped around on a child's scooter. Unclear if that was just for fun or because of the missing leg. He enjoyed trying out disguises and took photos of the ones he thought had worked well. So it seems he's both Q and M, maybe from James Bond, and certainly an overgrown child. It's a good thing that selfies weren't a thing yet, because he would have loved them. But the FIS under Smith-Cumming definitely has some real success as well. There's serious work getting done. They're focused on Germany. His agents provide a ton of crucial information about the development of the German fleet and U-boat construction programs and their timeline. 1911, they were able to provide a full and illustrated description of new heavy shell development in Germany, and were able to account, they had a sense of what these new shells could do in terms of their performance and sort of what damage they could cause. When World War I broke out in 1914, it just served to confirm all the long-held now British fears about Germany and their military might and their desire to invade their neighbors. So Smith-Cummings, and his spies are very well positioned to take action and be involved, because all these fears have been realized. So they notched a number of successes. His network of spies discovered that there was significant naval losses at the Battle of Jutland in World War I, and the losses were so devastating that they basically determined, not initially, but after some intelligence gathering, that the German fleet would basically be out of action for the rest of the war. And this victory, military victory, but also intelligence victory, was a huge morale boost back home. He coordinated a network of 800 agents, both men and women, codenamed La Dame Blanche. This network of agents, mostly in Belgium, reported endlessly on troop movement, and often used a variety of unconventional methods to pass on information. Seaman letters was one of them. Another agent who was also a midwife was allowed to cross military lines, and she carried reports wrapped around the whale bones in her corset. And there's constant, data coming back and forth on basically a daily basis. Germany happily loses World War I, and the Foreign Intelligence Service continues to keep, they just keep working. Smith-Cumming starts to shift the focus of the agency from Germany to Russia. But in 1923, he falls into ill health, and he dies on June 23rd, 1923, at the age of 64. But his signature lives on to this day. His successors at MI6 signed documents with the letter C, now standing for chief. After his death, wasn't actually, the name wasn't changed to MI6 until World War II. But even then, most folks didn't know about it, because the British government didn't acknowledge the existence of MI6 until 1994. So it was all
really,
it was all
wow.
all very invisible for a very, very long period of time. And with James Bond movies, etc., MI6 has come more and more into the light. They actually commissioned a book in 2010 about the history of MI6. Sir John Scarlett, who's also a former SIS chief, said, quote, "Mansfield Cumming believed passionately in secrecy." And the book itself was written by an Irish historian, this guy named Keith Jeffrey, who managed to shed some light on the agency and Smith-Cumming. He says, quote, "I looked very hard for bad stuff. In the end, I found less evidence than perhaps we might have expected, certainly less evidence than I might have expected as the amateur espionage fiction buff that I was." One myth, though, that Jeffrey was able to retire was that Smith-Cumming had cut off his own leg with a penknife, because that didn't happen. He was in an accident, but it had been taken to the hospital, and doctors had taken the leg off. But he just liked the story so much, he just, I guess, couldn't help himself and kept telling it. So not only is Cumming the basis of M in James Bond. M, that letter designation coming from his first name, but also in John le Carre's books. The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy,
The George Smiley novels. Yeah.
yeah. Control signs his name as C using green ink. And the character of Mansfield Smith-Cumming is actually in Riley Ace of Spies briefly. And there's a last little item I put in here just because of timeliness. Smith-Cumming was portrayed by an actor named Joss Ackland in a BBC One series called Ashendon that came out in 1991. You would totally recognize Josh Ackland. I think he was the bad guy in Lethal Weapon 2. He was in The Hunt for Red October. And what else? But he, British actor, he died yesterday at the age of 95.
Huh.
So
he was the bad guy in Lethal Weapon 2?
2 or 3, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so he just passed away. So anyway, that's a brief look at the really peculiar life of a very peculiar man. But anyway, inspired a whole bunch of other fiction and art.
Very cool. Was he ever knighted? Was he Sir Mansfield?
Yes, Sir Mansfield Smith-Cumming, hyphenated.
Very cool. All right. Another in our growing cast of interesting and oddball characters that war produces.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the Dream Idiots world.
Absolutely.
Oh, Bryan, you mentioned before that we have a curse word of the week, maybe even 2. Is that correct?
We do have 2.
It's time for the Dream Idiots curse word of the week.
Way back when I talked about minced oaths, and the fact that late night TV, occasionally has to replace motherfucker with mother fudger and fuck you with forget you. All those, and I read a whole bunch of them. I was introduced to 2 by a relative who was visiting me. This is on middle school campuses. The first word is shamit. It's shit plus damn it. You can totally get away with sham it. Go sham it. It does sound a little like a product you would buy to dry your car. But sham it is one, and then the other one is cheese and fries, as in Jesus Christ. Cheese and fries. Yeah. She gave me those 2 recently. I thought those were too good not to share.
I'll throw
cheese and fries.
And when you're eating your cheese and fries, you might want to drink some sugar honey iced tea.
Sure.
Think about it. Sugar honey iced tea is an acronym that my sons were shouting when they really wanted to say shit.
Shit. Okay.
SHIT. Sugar honey iced tea. That's good. I like that. Minced oaths from the middle school playgrounds of America.
Yeah. Or at least one.
It. I'm going to start using that. That's good. I sham it. From out of the mouths of babes. All right. Excellent curse words of the week. So Bryan, you mentioned the letter Q. Let's put a pin in that. We'll come back to that. This week, I want to tell you about somebody by the name of Romana, not Ramona, like the Beverly Cleary character, but Romana, like the Doctor Who character. Don't say I never gave you nothing, Doctor Who fans. In 2020, Romana Didulo founded a new non-registered political party, the Canada First Party. Bryan, I think it's great when people, citizens, be they here or in Canada or any place, get involved with politics and take the reins. Right? How do you feel about that? Is that pretty good when people start things off? Okay, yeah,
sure. Yeah.
So the slogan of the Canada First Party is draining the swamp in Ottawa. Eventually, Didulo would go on to declare herself the Queen of Canada and then eventually the Queen of the World. Let's see how she got there. She was born in the Philippines in 1974. And unfortunately, her parents died within a year of each other in the mid-'80s. So that sucks. You're 12, 13 years old, and both of your parents die. But she was raised along with a sibling by an aunt and her grandparents. She eventually, and apparently, immigrated to Vancouver, Canada sometime in 1990. Pardon me. At some point in 2006, she was the owner-operator of a business whose principal aim was to match prospective employers in the natural gas, oil, and mineral extraction industry with immigrant workers who had professional experience in those specific fields. That's not a bad idea for a business in Western Canada, right? I mean, that's
she's a headhunter. Yeah, right. It's fine.
yeah, right. Yeah. So yeah, not a bad idea for a business. This business went out of business at some point. And the next 15 years or so were hard for me to nail down as to what was going on. But Didulo claims to have been unhoused, living out of her car, and at times in sleeping on the floor of a friend's nail salon. Whatever the case, she emerged again in 2020, supposedly filling a power vacuum in the QAnon structure when Q dropped out of sight. Do you remember when Q kind of dropped off the radar? And we think it was probably a guy by the name of Ron Watkins. Right. That's the problem with anonymity, is that if you do drop out, anyone can claim that, oh, I was actually that guy, or it's kind of like the end of the life of Bryan, right? Oh, I'm Jesus. I'm Jesus. Not that Q is Jesus. Didulo at this point was strongly aligned with one of your favorite bunches, I think, the Sovereign Citizen Movement. Are you familiar with this movement?
No, not at all.
Oh, this is a fun bunch. They basically argue that individuals are not beholden to any government legislation that they do not consent to.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yes, that now does ring a bell, because that's come up a few times with, enemy combatants claiming that they're not under the auspices or the authority of the United States, and they're right.
Right. Clive and Bundy out west.
Right. Yes.
With his cattle, stuff like that.
Right.
Bryan, I don't consent to register my vehicles or obtain a driver's license, Bryan. I don't consent to that. Bryan, I don't consent to not setting things on fire, Bryan. Bryan, I do not consent to obtaining a written consent for Major League Baseball, Bryan. At some point, Didulo began to referring to herself as either the rightful Queen of Canada or the rightful monarch of Canada. She claims to have been appointed by, and this is when things get a little odd, David J. Carlson, who she identifies as the, quote, King of America and Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Armed Forces Civilian Command.
David Carlson?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that group. The U.S. Armed Forces Civilian Command. Carlson claims
that name.
he claims he was awarded these titles by the armed forces after his role in thwarting the Clinton cartel's failed 2016 coup against Donald Trump's election. That the military gave him these titles, awarded them to him. Not much known is known about his Highness King Daniel J. Carlson or his wife, Her Highness Lady Sarah M.G. Carlson, other than that they reside in Arizona.
My first guess would be Florida, but
well, yeah, I can see that. Didulo left British Columbia in 2022 and started traveling throughout Canada with a small group of her followers, referred to as volunteers, who did a lot of things for her, including maybe getting woken up at 4 a.m. to turn on her coffee machine for her. One stop included Ottawa, where she ostensibly appeared to support a group of long-haul truckers who had converged on the nation's capital. Do you remember when this happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Yeah. These truckers were there to protest general COVID mandates, and their actions clogged up the byways of Ottawa from January 22nd to February 23rd of 2022. They also seemed to dislike Canadian PM Justin Trudeau a lot. Didulo managed to piss everybody off somehow with the burning of a Canadian flag. So she managed to make everybody mad at some point. Later that year, in the summer, August 13th to be precise, in 2022, in Peterborough, Ontario, some 78 miles northeast of Toronto, a team of Didulo's followers appeared at a police station to arrest the entire police department and then transfer custody of the arrestees to the combined might of the U.S. Special Forces, the Canadian military, and the Global Military Alliance. Yeah, I've heard of two of those.
Yeah, that last one, it appears to be just in their local crazy brain.
Yeah. The group approached the front of the police station, but found the doors locked, so they shouted at the police officers through the locked doors using a megaphone, requesting that they step outside so they can be arrested. The police did not honor their request. The group then lurched around toward the back of the station, where they again found locked doors. And again, they shouted their request through said locked doors. The police, again, did not honor their request.
How big is this group? Is it like 3 people?
About 30 people.
30.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. From what I understand, at shift change, the group approached officers arriving for duty. The group's captain, reaching for the nearest Petersboro officer, declared, "You guys are involved in the COVID crimes, and I'm placing you under arrest." A brief scuffle broke out, with the captain suddenly on the ground. "Actually," one of the officers said, while cuffs were snapped onto wrists, "you're under arrest." 3 members of Didulo's little team were arrested, 2 of them charged with assaulting police officers. What follows next is one of my favorite quotes in the history of everything.
Okay.
Then Mayor of Petersboro, Diane Therian, exchanged words with QAnon supporters of Didulo. Her mayorship concluded with a parting shot that most people were thinking, but perhaps too polite to say. Her mayorship said, "Fuck off, you fuckwads." To which I say, brava, Madam Mayor, brava. Among other things, Romana Didulo has proclaimed or performed. She called for healthcare professionals who administer COVID vaccinations to minors to be, quote, shot and killed. She issued her decrees and cease and desist orders to outlaw government actions and void financial obligations to such entities as banks, businesses, and schools. This has led to several of her followers losing their homes and cars to creditors. She has called for the execution of former followers who have left her movement. In March of 2023, like all good sovereign leaders, she began issuing her own currency. To my knowledge, it is not accepted anywhere outside of her group. And did I mention that she claims to have high-level extraterrestrial connections?
You did not mention that, but it does not surprise me.
Yep. And this just scratches the surface of the crazy and the dangerous. It's estimated that Romana Didulo has some 36,000 followers. That's a look, man. Yeah.
36,000 followers.
Yeah. Most recently, this group, or let's call the stinking room shit. This cult has commandeered an abandoned school in Richmond, Saskatchewan. The town's population of about 150 people have received death decrees from Didulo. And before the cult's arrival, it was, in the words of one resident, so quiet, quote, "You could hear a mouse get a hard-on out here." Now there's a mobile RCMP station set up there. The buildings and the land are owned by a private individual who I guess bought it out from the state or the province. And as such, it may prove difficult to evict these people. Jones had Jonestown. Koresh had the Mount Carmel Center. And Didulo has Richmond. I think we all know where this is headed. And that is the story of the Queen of Canada. Sources for this, bbcnews.com, September 27th, 2023. Mike Windley's article, "A QAnon's Queen's Cult, the Abuse Was Nonstop." Theconversation.com, August 28th, 2022. Christine Sarteski, "How the Queen of Canada is Making Inroads into the US, Australia, and Beyond." And then 2 articles from Vice.com from the same great author, Mac Lamoureux. August 23rd, 2022, "Inside the QAnon Queen's Cult, the Abuse Was Nonstop." I'm sorry, I mixed up two articles there. And then Mark Lamoureux's other article, "A QAnon Cult Set Up a Compound in a Small Town. The Locals Are Fighting Back." and Wikipedia for some basic information, mainly about the wonderful former mayor of Petersboro, Diane Therian. So
Fuck them, fuckwads.
fuck off, fuckwads. This is a dangerous group of individuals.
Huh?
And I laugh my ass off at some of this shit, but they're gonna get people killed. And they're gonna go out the way these other cults have gone out, because they've
Sure.
got all the makings of what's gonna happen. They've got the charismatic leader, they've got the ideology, they've got the replacement of, I mean, it's insane what's gonna happen. And
Right. Well, I mean, this is, I mean, the crazy here, the level of crazy here is only slightly more than Donald Trump.
it's definitely in the same wheelhouse. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
sure.
it's
Yeah, and she's she's taking it to 11, but it's, I'm sorry, and this is, I mean, yeah, so it's the same shit.
Yep. And I mean, could you imagine what would have happened to these yahoos if they tried to do what they did? If they did to American cops what they had done to the Canadian police,
Oh yeah, I mean, right.
they would have gotten the living shit beaten out of them.
No,
I mean,
they would, they would just been gunned down. Right. I mean, yeah, insane.
I mean, I just can't. I can't fathom the crazy that goes into this kind of, and it comes back to that old quote from that very philosophical movie Star Wars, when Obi-Wan Kenobi says to Han Solo, he says, who's more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows the fool, or something to that effect. Right. I mean, a cult needs a leader. That's one of the basic things. What do? You cut them off from other people. You get them in a situation where they're beholden to you. You cut them off from their means of security via money.
Right.
You take their money. That's what she's done. They don't have any houses now. Some of them don't have cars. So they're traveling around in this RV, and now they're stuck in this compound that they've renamed, by the way, the Kingdom of Canada. So I think we all know how this is going to end, and it's not going to be.
I think we'll have updates on this story probably soon, because these, these never last that long. So, weeks, months, maybe.
And Canada gets cold, as from what I hear.
Yeah. Yeah,
even
winter's
southwestern Saskatchewan. Excuse me. So there you have it. The Queen of Canada, her followers.
Yeah. So Canada has nut jobs too. Okay, good. Good to know.
Yep.
That's hilarious. My God. Yeah. So, I mean, hilarious, but tragic and insane. Like, come on, people, think. Critical thinking. Use your fucking brain.
I should point out that for the Ottawa rally with the truckers, a lot of long haul companies, and I believe the Federation, whatever the National Federation of Truckers is up in Canada, they disavowed what was going on with those guys. They said they're not part of our organization. We don't know who these people are. So times like this, crises, the other thing that pops up in addition to cults is, of course, the corollary to cults, which is con men and con women. So
sure. Who will happily take your money.
All right. That's all I've got for this week.
Excellent. Great story. Thanks.
Well, there you have it. Another tangentially related pair of stories. That is the letter Q, somehow kind of related.
That's a bit of a reach, but yeah, no.
Well, for those of you who are have the holiday week, enjoy it. Whatever you do to celebrate it, honoring indigenous traditions, or celebrating the quote American way, however you do it. Be safe. Enjoy your time with your families and friends. Read a good book. Listen to some good podcasts. And be good to each other.
Yep. Thanks for listening, folks. Check us out online. Give us 5 stars on whichever platform you're on. Shoot us a review. And please check us out on dreamidiots.com and Facebook and Instagram. And drop us a line. Got a story idea? Got a curse word for us? Occasionally we take some suggestions, and I think we have a listener suggestion coming up here soon. So please keep listening, and we've got more coming.
This is a Rough Tiger production.
Bong bong,
Mhm.
Brian.
Bong bong?
Bong bong.
Bong bong. Good.